This is the Converge Podcast, brought to you by the Converge Institute. Each week, brilliant minds specializing in AI, blockchain, and fintech come together to challenge the status quo and empower disruption. Sponsored by our founding council, Nacuso, BankSocial, the Texas Blockchain Council, and the Universal AI University.
How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good today. I'm on the heels of exciting time at Money 2020. Got to see a lot of great people, a lot of great solutions that are out there. So I'm coming back from that, and it was great. I'm feeling great.
What about you, John? How you doing?
Running ragged, a lot going on right now, but I'm also off the road this week, so that's kind of nice after 7 weeks in a row of journeying around for family and work. And yeah, just glad to be stationary for a couple days, and good. It's a good day today. It's beautiful outside here.
And where are you at, John?
Northern Virginia, just outside of DC.
Right, that's right. And I know, Becky, you're always beautiful and fabulous.
I don't know about that, but I'm having a good day. Do you, Mr. JW, would you like to kick us off and introduce our guests to our audience?
I think we already have kicked off, but yes, I'll more formally do that right now. So this is kind of one of the first ones where we've had Ronaldo. I think this is the second one you've been on, second or third one.
Yeah, that's my second one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is great. I think you were on the Genesis one with us that we just released. Ronaldo, we have come together with Nacuso, BankSocial, and the Converge Institute here. For those who haven't, everybody knows Ronaldo, so I don't really know if we even have to give him an introduction. For the few that may tune in that don't know who Mr. Ronaldo Hardy is, give us a quick rundown, Ronaldo.
Yeah, so Ronaldo Hardy, President and CEO of Nacuso, the National Association of Credit Union Service Organizations. And I know that that's a very long way to say that, but essentially, we consider ourselves stewarding the entrepreneurial ecosystem of our industry so that we can ensure its long-term success and sustainability. And we are doing that by helping to accelerate and deploy scalable solutions for our credit union industry. I've been around for a while now, by the way. I still feel very young.
You look young, Ronaldo.
I was told
Everybody
yesterday, and I really
podcast
loved it.
including myself.
I was told yesterday I look 25. I was like, absolutely,
wow.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
When I was younger and people said I had a baby face, I'm like, no, I'm a grown man. Now I'm like 25. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I don't get 25. And you guys, by the way, are doing a fabulous job, Ronaldo. Just the changes that have come through in Nacuso, and we're super excited to have you guys here and coordinating and collaborating and kind of converging in our mutual headquarters down here in Dallas, Texas. Let's move over to you, JD, John Dearing. Give us a little bit of your background, John, and kind of what you guys focus on over there at Capstone.
Sure. First, thanks for having me. It's great to be included in this dialogue, and I agree wholeheartedly. What Ronaldo is doing to lead the charge at Nacuso is certainly very, very positive in the industry, and I love the growth combined with sustainability and success because to answer your question, that's what we're all about as well, is Capstone. We're assisting organizations to expand proactively as opposed to the challenge that's out there with a lot of reactive related transaction work. We're spending a lot of time in the credit union and CUSO community these days, assisting organizations with proactive external growth. So simple example is credit union wants to expand non-interest income. Been on my soapbox for years that the best way to do that is through a CUSO. And if you're not already involved in CUSOs, you should get involved. And we help folks get involved in that and expand proactively through primarily acquiring private companies. So that's where we end up, is assisting organizations to help with that effort. Been doing it about, it's coming up on 30 years next year. The organization's been around. I've been here about 28 of those years, coming up on 29, and partner with the firm and got into the credit union community about 20 years ago and love it, and I'm not looking back. It's been a great collaboration with us and our clients in the space and partners like you and Becky and Ronaldo, and love having conversations like this about the future and what's going on in innovation. So
we're going to get into I'll turn it over to you in a second, Becky. I was going to say we're going to get into kind of just just to lay the groundwork here, we want to talk a lot about CUSOs, investments, why credit unions should be doing CUSO investments. What does that look like? Because I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity both to innovate in the space and to kind of evolve the experiences for members, the go-to-market, the speed, but also, like you said, John, to do the non-interest income. And I think a lot more credit unions with Circle Fund and some of the other things that are happening are starting to come in tune with that. So we'll talk about it in a second. But Becky, why don't you're the glue that binds us all. And by the way, just FYI, we found out today that Ronaldo did a case study, and we're going to share this wisdom with you guys right now. If you wear a dark colored, solid color shirt, you will blend well. You will very well.
You your background, yeah.
Yeah. You go against your background. As opposed to Becky's hair, which is multicolored. The BankSocial blue is kind of the opposite of what you want to do when you're on a green screen. But that's why we don't put her beautiful face in the green screen. So Becky, as the glue that binds all of us, talk to us about how you met John, how you met Ronaldo. I think we've talked about our story. We don't need to go into that. But tell us about your experience with John, your experience with Ronaldo, and then I think that'll lead us pretty well. That probably will bridge us into kind of the CUSO story.
Well, I'm going to let John talk about how we met because I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't really remember exactly how we met. I know that I was doing some work with Pure IT, which is a CUSO that I helped start back in 2016. And of course, I've been involved in the CUSO for almost a decade as well, and Mr. Dearing is always involved in Nacuso, so I'm sure we met at a conference somewhere. But it is kind of interesting, John. You mentioned that I'm kind of that glue. I am the reason we all kind of know each other at the end of the day.
I know
because I'm the board chairman for Nacuso. Ronaldo is a new CEO for Nacuso. I was on the committee that helped hire him, and then I've known Mr. JD since before I even.
And you guys did a great job, by the way. I'm going to pat you on the back a little bit there.
Thank you.
It was not. It was a committee.
That's why I said you guys.
Yeah. But out of everyone on this call, I've known Mr. Dearing longer than either Mr. Wingate or Mr. Hardy. And so, Mr. JD, talk a little bit about our origin story.
Sure. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It definitely is the Pure IT combination and connection, if you will, which led into a lot of other fun things as well over the past 6 years, Becky. So 2018, late 2017 is when we started working with Pure IT. Yeah, it's amazing what you can find on your computer. So
I think you just know that from memory, but okay.
I guess I should have not said the next thing. You would have given me more credit than what's due. I like to use my reference tools. So so it was definitely through Pure IT. You guys were about 10, 11 months into the journey there when we started getting involved, and through that process, got to know you and the good folks at Pure IT, Jack and Kyle more. We knew Kyle from the prior chapter. That's how we got introduced to Jack and you through the board. And that's where it started. But to the next chapter is absolutely true as well. We were a few years into our CUSO journey at that point, and another connection.
Capstone and kind of you guys at Capstone and CUSOs?
That's correct. So we started working with CUSOs 19 years ago for one of the CUSOs that might be known out there, ESU, now Valera. And so through that relationship, got to know Guy Messick, the guru of CUSOs, and he in turn held my hand and mentored me through my early CUSO journey and got me involved with Nacuso, and told me one of my early learnings, right? He said, you need to come 3 years in a row because that's when your work in CUSO land will expand, because they'll believe that you're going to stick around for that sustainability and success into the future.
Nugget. Right here's a nugget. You got to show up to the Nacuso event for 3 years in a row. Ronaldo, this is a little bit of help. 3 years in a row. The nugget.
I'll take it.
And Becky, you told me this. You told me this early on. Not that I had to show up for 3 years, but that I need to come to the first Nacuso event, which I immediately signed up for.
Yes.
And we've felt that, John, that by coming back, there's this more, kind of feeling of you're here for the cause, you're here for the greater good.
That's right.
And I think Nacuso is one of those main points of collaboration for this space to evolve. It's a good nugget right there, John. I think everybody watching this, you'd be well served to be at Nacuso's event this year, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, Ronaldo. But John, maybe take us a little further down the CUSO. A lot of credit unions, they know generally what a CUSO is, but they don't really understand the value that it can bring to their organization, to their credit union. Can you give us a little bit? I'd love to hear from actually the different perspectives from all of you, because Becky, you come at it from a CEO perspective and a fintech. Ronaldo, you've got the CEO experience, and now you're also kind of that middle ground for connecting. And then John, you're really the guy who's putting the deals together. So you all have, excellent perspective on this, and I think this is going to be some juicy stuff to get into. But where do you guys think we should start? What's the best place to start in this ecosystem of kind of getting the perspective going?
JD, go ahead. You start.
Go, John.
All right, appreciate that. I guess it starts with strategy and what the credit union's trying to accomplish, John. And from there, there's a CUSO for everything. So if you're trying to grow more rapidly, you can utilize a CUSO, or there's already one that you can collaborate with. If you're trying to get deeper with your members for breadth of service, or product, there's a CUSO that can help you with that, or you can fire up a CUSO or collaborate with other credit unions to start a CUSO, or acquire a private business or invest in it and it becomes a CUSO. All those different structure availability is there as well. So, and the other piece of strategy is distribution, right? If you want to expand and access more members or new members or different geographies, CUSOs can help you with that. So there's a CUSO for everybody, and there's an opportunity to utilize CUSOs in a lot of situations. And to your point earlier, it doesn't take a lot necessarily to get involved in it. So that's another benefit to a credit union. There's lots of folks that are willing to work with you and share learnings, so you can swiftly get involved in something if you want and trial it and pilot it. And, there are people to help. So my first stance then is think about your strategy. Where are there gaps? Look in the mirror, maybe something you've been grappling with for a long, long time at your institution and haven't solved for. Maybe you should think about a CUSO. If you're doing great things in an area and want to put some jet fuel on it, there's probably a way through a CUSO to do that. So I'll pause and let others comment. I could go on forever on the benefits of CUSOs.
And you were talking, I just want to be clear, while you handle the investment side, that perspective was more on look at your strategy and put a CUSO at the top of the list of who can help you solve that roadmap or that strategy outcome and objective, not necessarily as an investment. So we'll get there in a minute. Is that right, John?
Right. I mean, I wouldn't. So yes to all of that, but I wouldn't consider investing in anything unless it fits with your strategy. So everything needs to start with strategy and your objectives and your mission and where you're headed on your roadmap. And then that's back to my be proactive comment versus reactive. People get so wrapped up in this is the deal opportunity in front of us and not necessarily see if it fits with our strategy. So we force folks, John, to step one, which is, what are you trying to accomplish? And then, to your point, put CUSO on the list of ways to solve for it, because a lot of folks are nervous about CUSOs or scared of it, or they've heard horror stories or don't know where to start, right? There's lots of different reasons. And then and only then, once you decide to give it a shot or get bigger in a particular area, then you figure out from there what the prospect list is and who you should talk to and down select from there versus criterion against your strategy, as opposed to jumping right to what's available for a transaction. So it's a few steps before you jump to transaction work, and we help guide folks through those first few things as well as the transaction work. But I'll pause.
There's quite the ecosystem available now, and I think it's growing all the time. What do you see as kind of the focal point? A CUSO can be an investment. It can be a product that you launch. What is Becky, I want to get your thoughts on this too. What do you see most people kind of from an attack point? What's most successful? And John, you probably have good insight on this too, but Ronaldo, you see it from both sides as kind of you're finding new ideas and bringing credit unions to it. Do you see that it's more about finding let's leave investment to the side for right now. Are 100% of the scenarios that you come across somebody looking for a solution or somebody seeing us, maybe they weren't looking for the solution, but they see something that's innovative and cool, and they come at it from a product and experience perspective first and then go to an investment? Or do you see people coming at it from hey, we're looking for some investments. This looks like a cool thing. Maybe we can use it later, but I want to invest. Like, how should a credit union, as the guy who's bringing people together for this, the industry collaboration point, how do you view that? And what do you think is the most successful way to approach it?
Well, that's a very loaded question, first of all. So this is what I'll say. There's historical context, and then there's what's happening now. And I believe that they're a bit different. And Becky may agree with me on this. So in historical context, people are coming to this model for various reasons. There's the utilization, right? And then there's the participation. But when they are engaging this model from a participation perspective in investing per se, then you're talking about reduction in operational overhead, increased efficiency, new market opportunity, or revenue generation, right? Those are pretty much the reasons why there would be engagement. Now, you have a whole army of credit union people who are like, well, I want to do business in a very insular way. So I want to make sure that if I'm connecting to advance from a product perspective, that I consider what's in our industry first. That's historical context. All of that, I mean, not all of that, but a lot of that, you can somewhat toss out a bit right now. Because right now, it feels like the engagement of the CUSO model is around two things. So can I, one, continue, and I don't know why there's like a party going on. In
You're about
Belize.
to say something magical.
I'm starting a party over
This
here,
AI
okay?
is crazy.
I
It
don't know
knows
about
what's
y'all.
about to happen. Time to celebrate.
That's what I don't know about y'all, but I'm starting a party, right?
I think my daughter just jumped in and found one of the buttons that she likes.
Okay, so I would say, okay, you have two things, right? You have the progressive thinkers that are now saying, okay, how do I explore doing something a bit different? Even this word fintech, which you all sit on that side, right? But it's not a bad word in our industry anymore. And it used to be like profanity in our industry. I remember when it was like, if you said fintech, everybody ran from that. They are trying to kill our industry.
Right.
So, but that's not the case anymore. So you have a lot of the executives and credit unions are saying, okay, can we be progressive enough to keep up with consumer expectation through development and deployment of solutions that respond to their needs? It's not dismissing reduction of operational overhead, increased efficiency, new market opportunity, and revenue generation. But some of it now is that I want to make sure that I'm in pace with where the market is going. The overwhelming majority now that are looking at this model specifically, and I know we will talk about this in a minute, and it's at every asset size, it's really to respond to what's happening with non-interest income. There are significant challenges in that area right now, obviously, with so much discussion about fees and what is a junk fee. And, and putting my previous credit union CEO hat on, and I'm sure Becky will do the same, I often think about what would I be doing right now if I were in a similar position, that I had to experience so much downward pressure on an area of our revenue that has helped to sustain us in many ways. So you have a lot of credit unions that are trying to be somewhat proactive because it's also reactive because this is something happening in real time. But in anticipation of more of that, you have many who are saying, well, if we are to survive, then we must be entrepreneurial. So what was the historical entry point? I don't think it's going to be where the majority sits over the next probably decade, where I expect, and Becky can tell you this, I said this in my interview, I believe that this will be one of the most significant accelerating areas of our industry for the next decade. We will see a boom.
I agree.
In both QSOs and fintechs as a result of the necessity of it, the things that I'm mentioning before. Now, and then I'll shut up because I get excited about this and I realize that other people have to talk, right? I'm a CUSO evangelist, right? Uh, I will say this in terms of what we see working more and where the shifts are happening. There's there's a much larger push for multi-owned versus wholly owned now. Whereas I believe in some of the earlier days of this model and its deployment, wholly owned was happened quite frequently. And it was because of what credit unions were investing in then. I think there's a broader knowledge of the model, even though there's still a lot of education needed, and an understanding of the acceleration of that innovation through collaboration. So we are seeing a lot of emphasis on multi-owned, which in my opinion does give the opportunity for greater growth, greater expertise, and greater outcomes in the end. So that's my thoughts.
That's absolutely what we're seeing, Ronaldo. I've only been here for a short time. Becky, you've not only, they call you the CUSO queen, for those who don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Yes.
well, is it not true? Am I the only one that knows this? You guys?
It is true.
So it is true. Becky is known as the CUSO queen because you've now 3 or 4 and you've advised numerous. You're the chairman of Nacuso for the last several years. You work hand in hand with John on several deals, and of course all the time with Ronaldo. Give us a perspective of somebody who's both started several CUSOs, utilized CUSOs, because I think one of the things you taught me early on was that a credit union loves working with CUSOs because they understand that for many reasons there's a strategic alignment, not just from a product perspective, but from an ethos perspective. Talk to us about that perspective of a CUSO founder and a CEO, and how as a credit union you should be approaching this. And I think even giving those CUSOs that may be, or those companies that may be wanting to become CUSOs and help serve the space, some perspective on the best way to approach that. I know there's a couple questions in there, but one, from a credit union CEO, how do you approach a CUSO? And then on the heels of that, as a executive team of a fintech or somebody wanting to serve, how do you approach it from that side?
Well, the first part of your question talks about, as a credit union CEO, why am I looking at CUSOs? And one of the things that we did when I was at Lone Star Credit Union is we started looking at choosing our partners or our vendors, choosing the service providers that we use, not only based on price or product fit, but also based on culture fit. And you can work with a partner, they can provide a particular service, but if they don't share your way of doing business, then it's probably not going to work out long term. And all of us can think of vendors, service providers out there that don't have the same ethos as we do as a credit union industry.
Can I say one?
Yeah,
no.
we all know some of those, and they're the ones that are holding credit unions' feet to the fire as it relates specifically to contracts and getting out of contracts. And that's just not a great experience for anyone. And at the end of the day, we are owned by our members. And everything that happens with a service provider that we interact with is going to impact our members in some way. So as a credit union CEO, I have a fiduciary responsibility, as well as my board, to do what's best for my members. And if I'm contracting with a company that has really no interest in making sure that my members get the best experience, then that's probably not the right vendor for me. So, of course, a CUSO in that scenario is the best fit because CUSOs are owned by credit unions. And so oftentimes credit unions have some sort of control at some point, right? They're on the board, they're an advisor, they're using the service in many cases, which is something that you found, John, on the fintech side, but not the CUSO side, is it is quite rare in the fintech world, or just the for-profit world in general, to have the people who invest in you actually use your product. And that's a unique thing in this space. And it's actually quite common. There are lots and lots of credit unions who engage with a company, which is what happened with Pure IT, with Lone Star. We engaged with a company. That company said, we love working with credit unions, because every company loves working with credit unions, because our people are fantastic. And they say, I want to help more credit unions. And so in order to do that, I'm going to raise some money so I can grow. And, JD can probably speak to this more than me, but it's a natural fit to go, well, why don't we just invest in a company we already use? Because we know it's viable, right? We know that there's a product market fit. We know what
they're great,
doing
right?
for
Their
us.
ethos,
Yes.
their culture,
Everything.
all that. Yep.
And so that's something that's unique in this space. And I would like to ask John Dearing, because you said that Capstone chose to kind of get into the CUSO space 19 years ago. I'm very curious, and Ronaldo talked a little bit about the evolution of CUSOs, and absolutely, I call them, there's traditional CUSOs, which are the wholly owned CUSOs, which are the mortgage CUSOs, the lending CUSOs, small business lending, insurance, brokerage, kind of the traditional. And then there's a contemporary side to the CUSOs, where now we're looking at multi-owned. We're looking at companies that credit unions are investing in, where the people didn't start in the credit union space. They might be serving credit unions, but they're not credit union people to begin with. And so, JD, what was the impetus for Capstone to start looking at this space?
So you give me more credit than I'm due once again, Becky. We generate a lot of business through speaking. So it just so happened that PSU at the time was looking for an expert to help with valuation, teaching their organization how to do due diligence and be proactive about acquisition. Their head of strategy at the time attended one of our mergers and acquisitions courses, where we were the headline speaker and facilitator, and that's how we got introduced in. So it wasn't necessarily us saying, we're all in on CUSO land. That came over time, right? So we started working for PSU. Then the next generation is doing transactions with PSU, looking at their CUSO portfolio that they had already through some historical investments, helping them navigate through that transition and deciding what to do with those, and getting access, if you will, to the boards of those various organizations where other CUSOs were investing. And oh, by the way, credit unions were sitting on those boards, and then hear us talking about proactive growth through acquisition of privately held organizations, doing it the right way as opposed to reactively. And it started to expand from there. Then, as you well know, that the credit union community is very good at positive referrals when you do good work. So it started, chapter 2 was more folks started introducing us. And then chapter 3 was about only 5 or 6 years ago, when we said, okay, there's a lot of positive history that we've developed. There's a lot of opportunity in front of us in the CUSO community, working with additional leaders at CUSOs and also credit unions that have a desire to expand, either more rapidly utilizing CUSOs or get into the CUSO community. So that's when we flipped the switch to be a little more proactive out there in the community. So it did take us a decade or so to actually do what you're saying we did, but that's okay. That's it. You live and learn. And since that time, it's been doubling every year. So all good there. Yeah. Did I even answer the question?
Well, I've got a question. I've got a question here.
I lost track.
It's always good to understand history. I'm very interested in the shift, though, that Ronaldo talked about. Becky, you alluded to it. And John, you also alluded to it, all three of you. I want to get into the mind of a credit union CEO, because really the whole enablement here comes from the credit union executive team, whether they're enabling, whether they're investing, whether they're getting involved with a CUSO. I want to understand the mentality of a credit union CEO who's out there, who's listening to this podcast and says, I think like that. Maybe I should be looking at a CUSO if I'm not, or maybe I should be investing in one of the CUSOs I currently have, or maybe I should go to Nacuso to understand what this new world looks like. Because an interesting thing that you all said was that, because this doesn't exist in the kind of traditional world, you want as little people on your cap table as possible. Typically, your investors don't want other investors coming in. The unique thing here, though, is maybe Ronaldo credit unions are embracing this idea of fintech, and they're starting. What are the things that, if I'm listening to this as a credit union CEO, I say I resonate with that. That is me. I need to go to Nacuso. I need to get involved with more CUSOs. What is that, Ronaldo? What is that? Because you kind of painted this shift. It sounds like you have a good idea. And John, you've got to talk to a lot of credit union CEOs too as they're going through this. What their goals and objectives are. Ronaldo, what is that? What does that mentality look like?
I think it's two things, right? So I think that as a CEO, and I'm speaking from my own perspective, right? So in my first credit union, I was almost successful at organizing a coalition of credit unions to pursue starting a CUSO. And at that time, based upon where we were in asset size, it really was a sustainability move. Could we compete by coming together, finding ways to get collective bargaining on better technology was one of the things. Could we get more expertise at the table to help us with not only the implementation, but the ongoing utilization of that technology? So we're looking for cost savings, but also looking for an opportunity to accelerate, our organizational strategy and vision, but also increasing sustainability, because at a certain asset size, of course, that is always the fight. Can we be around much longer, right? So there's that side of it. Now, in my last seat as CEO of a credit union, then for me, it really would be about the acceleration of the vision. We had a very, very progressive vision and uncommon. Our vision was to eliminate poverty in our community. And so we were really thoughtful about what we did in terms of the steps that we took. And I would look at technology that helped me to do that better. I like solutions that would help me to serve the unbanked and underbanked effectively, so that I was creating more opportunities for people in my community and looking for organizations, whether it's a CUSO or now you're seeing a lot of movement of fintechs becoming CUSOs. Of course, you understand that. So I was looking for, could I find those solutions and those partners who were not afraid of this audience or looking down on them, but they were actually finding resources and developing tools that would help to uplift this aspect of the community that I was seeking to reach, right? And I think now it's going to be a bit of both. You have the question of sustainability, because now the conversation around what asset size do you need to be to ensure your sustainability, that continues to grow, so, you're more and more, you have more and more organizations. Yeah, I remember it was like, you must be 50 million, then you must be 100. And now people are like, you have to be 500 million or you're probably not going to be around, which I don't believe.
I don't believe that.
But I will say that is the conversation. So you have a lot of credit unions that are like, I just want to be sustainable. I want to be here. I don't want to go away. And so that is still happening. But I do see that those who are diving deep into their organizational strategy, and I'm not talking about a vanilla approach to it where we're just doing basic credit union concepts, but there is a very refined business model that's attached to a specific audience of people that are being reached in communities that have very different characteristics, than another community all the way across the country. Credit unions that are going deeper in their strategy and making sure that they have the tools at the table to be able to accelerate that, then they're looking at this a bit different, because now it's not just about sustainability, but it's about increasing their own strategic aptitude and ability to advance their strategic plans, right? And so organizational capacity is important. You can have the best strategic plan in the world, but if you don't have organizational capacity, and that's not just in human resources, but it's also in the tools, that are deployed by many CUSOs and fintechs. I use them both interchangeably because they're becoming that in our industry. Then I think that credit unions are saying, I need to look this way so that I can continue being effective. And then I'll say this final piece. I talk long when I get excited about something.
We all do.
But it's also this thing about what's happening with the next generation consumer. And credit unions have been having the conversation for years about younger members, but it's getting pretty scary. Anytime our average age of member is 53, that's scary. I think I just heard a statistic that the average age of individual It's somewhere in between 37 and 39 for our country. I can't remember the exact number, but credit unions at
You know what it is for a bank?
what?
40.
Yeah, it's 30. But you're right, though, Ronaldo. The average age of the United States is between 37 and 39. It's right there.
So thinking about that, and so the bank has the 40-year-old, all right? They're coming after me because I'm there, right? But in the credit union world, 53.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ground to be made up by having the right solutions at the table. And so I think that is also like another thing that it's a reason why we cannot avoid this conversation.
But you know what, though? There's this whole, like, the younger generations care about people. They're socially involved. The ethos of the young fits the ethos of the credit union. There's an outreach and a messaging problem of people of the newer generations understanding that, you know, if you ask 100 out of 100 people out of high school if they would rather have their own bank or you know, put money in a corporate, what they consider corporate greed owned bank. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. They're going to 100 of them are going to say they want it. And so it's an outreach. It's a messaging thing. John, you know, I think Ronaldo talked about it a lot. If you have any more insights there, love to hear it. I would also love to hear, you know, I think when we see credit unions, they're from a, it's easy to understand how you would engage with a QSO or a fintech to get a product signed, right? You do an RFP, you look at it looks great, you sign the documents and you move on. It fits your strategy, you move on. From an investment standpoint, though, there's quite the novel approach. Like me coming in and looking at a QSO investment is not like your standard. It's, you know, most of the time they're not structured like your standard VC investment. You know, I put money in, I'm on the cap table, and then 100x me and get me out in 3 months. I want 100x in 3 months. I want to be out of here, be a billionaire. That's not the same approach that you take most of the time with QSOs and credit unions. And then even the ability to kind of do things where you do have these multi-funded, you know, 10 credit unions will get together, 20 credit unions get together. They'll put in 50K or 100K a piece, right? There's a different way, there's a different approach to this. And this is kind of both for fintechs and credit unions. Can you talk through some of the novel approaches that you're seeing that work really well? If there's like Ronaldo just talked about it, he got a group of credit unions together. I don't know where you guys had the issues, but certainly finding the funding, putting together the deal is a big part of the issue, right? Always. And John, I think your insights there, we've loved. I mean, you've helped us so much in navigating these newly we're creating these waters as we go. Talk to it. What are those ways to pull a deal together? How do you get these things across the finish line?
Wow. Let's see. I think that was about 8 different topics, but let me.
It's one. How do you put a deal together? What are these deals looking like out there?
All right. So yeah, I'll back up 1 second. And that is, I also want to note 2 things that are going on in the marketplace, and I will answer your question. The first is, Becky noted earlier, there's a big change going on with the board members of credit unions and a big change at leadership at credit unions, right? So also overlaying what Ronaldo's talking about, the changes in the marketplace, those 2 things are going on as well, which is a fabulous thing, I think, for the QSO community and for waving the flag for QSOs to help organizations expand and thrive into the future. So I'll just put that aside because Ronaldo mentioned something that lit a fire under me on that, because that's another important trend that I think is going on out there now.
Fires.
Yeah. I got a lot on that one. But anyway, to your question of creative deal structuring, I guess, the other thing that's out there right now is the war on talent. Everyone in every industry, we work in 100 different industries. Credit unions are one of the ones that we work in. Okay. So, but the war on talent is across every little space that we work in.
Point, John.
So QSOs and talent, access to talent and expertise, if it's the technological requirements, or as you know, how do we reach the younger demographic? How do we penetrate our members more and deeper to move them from 1.7 to 2.3 products per member? You know, accessing people that actually know maybe more than the homegrown folks at the credit union, or can complement them, is maybe a nicer way of saying that, right? QSOs can help with that as well. And so to your point around deal structure creativity, we're seeing a lot of deals being struck where entrepreneurs are part of the cap table, entrepreneurs are part of the ethos of the organization, How do we incent them and keep them? How do we maybe also incent and keep good people at the credit union who might need something new on their professional development trail? CUSO is a great way to do that. So there's more flexibility in the CUSO for comp structure, incentive plans, things of that nature. So that's part one of my answer. Part two of my answer is, it doesn't take much, back to my comment on resources of dollars. There are only two resources. You guys have heard me say that 100 times over our friendships, but there's only two resources. It's either the human time or the dollars. Those are the two that leaders and boards are allocating every minute of every day and making tough decisions, right? So when they're doing that, they can invest, if you will, a small dollar amount and maybe more on the human time spectrum into a CUSO and get an insider view, get access to that talent, get access to that product or service, get access to the development of a new chapter or a new growth pathway, if you will. And it doesn't have to take much in investment. Or if you decide that you want to put more in investment in and less in the human time, you can do that and work with others in the credit union community to figure out what the right balance is, because maybe your peer in a credit union CEO is struggling with one and more than the other, and you have, so that you can figure out a way to match make that way on deal structure, if you will, John. So those are the first couple comments, but there's a lot more there to unpack. So.
Well, I want to hear about what lit a fire. I want to hear the fire.
I know, right? That he dropped a fireball and then he just kind of moved on. We didn't get back to the fire.
Well, I think this whole commentary around the CUSOs coming together with fintechs and, the war on talent for credit unions and how they're viewed in the younger demographic as maybe stodgy and, to your point about messaging, not really known. And if they're known, they're put in the category of just another bank, right? And it's very different. So the fire that was lit was around kind of the age bracket around my kids. And I think as more leaders come in from outside of the credit union community and more leaders come in, or more board members come in that haven't been sitting on the board for 50 years and only look at the things one way, there's more opportunity to solve the riddles and solve the needs of this next generation that's coming up now, right? So that's the fire and the sandbox that I get on around. There's always a pivot point in an organization, right? And it could be that CEO X needs outside perspective to come in and convince the loudest board member of something, right? That's a specific example that happens all the time, right? So they need that outside perspective, if you will. There's another situation where fintechs are coming in and taking market share away from us. Okay, well, maybe they're taking some, but oh, by the way, to Ronaldo's point earlier, there's also ways to partner with folks to actually open up your funnel
they're
20 times.
Away. Don't look at it that way. They're not taking away. They're identifying opportunities. They're showing you places that you can go. Credit unions have the benefit of cost of capital. A fintech cannot layer themselves on top of a bank and have a better access to cost of capital. The only thing you're missing is the experience. So look at it as they're showing you the way. Now just take your cost of capital and the benefit you can provide to your community, to Ronaldo's point, and get in there, partner with a CUSO, and go deliver.
And it only takes $1 to invest from a credit union into FinTech X to make it a CUSO. And then to Becky's point, you can get, the insight at whatever level in the organization. You can cooperate with them to build and expand. You can pilot opportunities to target market or whatever you're trying to solve for, right? So my point was more about the perception, right? The perception is changing. It's already changed in the consumer, to Ronaldo's point. It's continuing to evolve and change in the boardroom and the leadership groups at credit unions.
Another idea here is why don't these credit unions that are investing, why don't they maybe bring some of these younger fintech on their advisory?
Oh, yeah.
Like invite them to be advisors into your board and insightful, get some insight and get some new ideas. We talked last week, Becky and I were in Utah, and I talked to, chairmans and CEOs about inviting family members, kids and nephews and cousins to come be advisor members. You're not only training a new board member, but you're getting perspective that you wouldn't get any other way. And how many times have we done that and it worked? And people are like, it was the greatest idea. I had like three or four credit unions say, this is a great idea. I'm going to do
Couldn't
this.
agree more. Yep.
Well, I have an idea too that I think every credit union under $50 million should be run by a 20-something-year-old.
Oh, man.
What?
No, I agree.
that
I
would
mean,
be. Yeah.
that was my first journey as CEO at 27. I started at a $23 million credit union and helped to just revitalize and bring energy to that. Now, that also prepared me to take a bigger journey. But I agree. I'll say this too. And this is a bit of an observation and a call out for us as an industry. We have severely dropped the ball as an industry, in my opinion, in how we handle content. We have missed the mark on how the next generation wants to receive communication. Severely behind.
How and where?
Severely behind.
How and where?
How and where? There should, for all of the investment that we made, and I'm not knocking it, right? We made an investment in a public awareness campaign, right? But we really missed the mark on where we should be communicating. If we had a universal message and we found a way to deploy that through the digital channels that younger people are listening and the content was structured in a way that they would absorb it, then we wouldn't have this significant barrier of brand awareness. And that's what we have. You know, I just had a friend of mine with me who traveled to Money 2020. He came to the underground with me and he hears me talk about the industry all the time. But he sat in the room and he was like, whoa, he's 36. And he's like, oh, I'm learning so much. I wish I knew all of this information. And while we are trying to do so much in how we have our individual brands, where we are missing opportunity is we have literally from millennials to Gen Z to the Apple generation. Now, older generations are responding to that evolution as well. But we missed an opportunity to get our message out. And I know that that's not what this was about. But when we started talking about younger people, I'm like,
And I think the problem is I see it coming from outside the credit union space. There's so much emphasis on selling, becoming the primary financial institution, and less on evangelizing the reasons why credit unions are where you inherently want to put your money, where you want to be, who you want to do business with.
yeah, it's boring when we do it too. It's like,
Yeah.
you should bank with a credit union.
Or it's just rates, right? And the battle on rates is not where you want to play.
It's not exactly. You can't battle on rates. Exactly. You can't battle on rates. And I think there's a tremendous, we need to talk about that, Ronaldo, a campaign, a credit union wide campaign to help shift the perspective on what, I hate the word. For my whole life, the word credit union to me meant like, I had to pay a dues to the union and then have good credit and then maybe I would get in. That's what my mind told me a credit union was. There's definitely a better way or a different way to communicate the message by not saying, hey, we're credit unions, but by saying we are where you inherently, want to be. When you hear about what we are, this is where you're going to say, I want to be there. I don't want to be anywhere else. Becky and I have experienced it. We experience it on our spaces and our Twitter spaces and things like that. But.
Well, and no CEO that I'm aware of, maybe there are some out there, but credit union CEOs that go on an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything, right, on Twitter. But there's lots of fintech CEOs that go out there and do that, or founders, but a credit union CEO doesn't do that. And when we talk about community in the younger generation space, right, it's a global community. It's a digital community. People are connected all over the place 24/7 through the device that they carry in their hand. And just because our credit union members have to come to an annual meeting to vote for the board of directors doesn't mean they can't be a digital community. And so that is something we talk about all the time, and that could take up a whole nother podcast. We probably need to be wrapping this up, Mr.
I was about to
Wingate.
say, maybe that's our next conversation, right?
Yes.
I'm like, first of all, and I know this is going to have its own humor to it, but because people say that we look alike, but we need our own Jake from State Farm for our industry to really be our spokesperson to get our brand out there as a movement collectively. And to Becky's point, it's so true. One of the things in the last credit union I led, we did Facebook Live with the CEO. It was a game changer.
Yeah.
And at first, our marketing agency was like, do not do that. You're going to, especially because the brand reputation was at risk at the time. And so they were like, you're going to get a lot of bad feedback. And I'm like, and we'll tackle it in real time and we'll gain trust. And we only got, on the very first one, we got one person. And I was able to handle that issue in real time, gain the trust of the community, and we grew from there. But we should be, our CEO should be vocal and should be public and should be accessible to answer questions. But yeah, we need our Jake from State Farm for the industry, who's our spokesperson, helping to carry that brand message forward. I think in the digital, without being attached to one brand, who can get the message forward about what we do as a movement? I think we need something like that.
We need to brainstorm on that. All right, let's wrap it up. This was a really great call. John Dearing, thank you so much. Pleasure to have you on, sharing all these insights. I think it's a super critical part of the future of credit unions, CUSOs. Ronaldo, always love having you around and your insights. Becky, of course, love you. Thank you all very much. Thanks for joining the Converge
everyone.
podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.